Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Zero Hour. You know, there has been a lot of talk this week from the president and from others in his party and from independent commentators about wealth inequality. And it's getting to be a kind of situation where wealth inequality is like the weather. Everybody talks about it, nobody does anything about it. There are things we can do to correct wealth inequality, but if there's one thing we learned in 2014, it is that it is a global problem and that we are part of that global problem. That just as with climate change, we do not exist independent from the rest of the planet. We are integrated with the rest of the planet. Now, a new study released last week from Oxfam International reported that the combined wealth of the richest 1% in the world will be greater than that of the remaining 99% at some point in 2016. That is to say, some point next year, according to a study by Oxfam, 1% of the world's population will hold more than half of its entire wealth. Now, what does that tell us? Number one, let's understand, this is an estimate because it is hard to track global wealth. That was one of the things that the great economist Thomas Piketty pointed out in his book, Capital in the 21st Century. So that may not happen in 2016. They may be off by 10 or 15%, or it may have happened already. But the point is this. They're pretty close, and it's a terrifying prospect. Oxfam calls it an explosion of inequality, and that is not a bad term for it. The inequality in this country and elsewhere is soaring. Now, that's an abstract way to put it. A concrete way to put it is that if very, very few people are snatching up all the wealth of the country at an unprecedented rate, putting the rest of the population in danger. Now, Oxfam points out that it is very difficult to fight global poverty when you have this increasing level of inequality. As they say, when 1 in 9 people around the world don't have enough food to eat and the growing gap between rich and poor is getting worse, well, I guess I should just add to that that's a recipe for disaster, human, moral, and possibly physical as well. We should be worried about the instability and violence that this situation is likely to create. As the head of Oxfam put it, an incredible concentration of wealth right at the top of society is not only economically inefficient, it is bad for the planet, it is bad for the economy, and it seems to be getting worse. Now, this report comes just as people are gathering in Davos, Switzerland for the World Economic Forum of the wealthiest and most privileged among us. Now, those who are gathering in Davos are in fact talking about wealth inequality, but you can be sure they will not propose any ideas that inconvenience them very greatly. So we have to say now that with a situation of inequality that is so great, we need to be looking at not only what kind of suffering or inconvenience for poverty is that creating today. And by the way, I remind you that the number of Americans in poverty remains above 40 million, that the number of children in poverty in America remains among 1 in 5. So the question is, how do we correct not only our economy, but the political economy that drives it? How do we give the voiceless people a voice in this country? How do we get big money out of politics? And how do we get big money out of the media, which is influencing the political debate? This is the mission of our time. This is the challenge of our time. This is where, if we inspire ourselves to take action, if we can change our political system, if we can change our political dialogue, if we can open up the media to new ideas, we can stop being a problem for the rest of the world, and we can become an inspiration for the world. If the United States, as captivated as it has become by individual wealth and corporate wealth, can reform itself economically and politically, it will be an inspiration for the world. That is just something to think about as we go about the coming week. I'm RJ Eskow, and this is the Zero Hour.